Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the Signs and Seasons report for the week beginning the 7th of February, outlining the key transits during this week along with key aspects that will be taking place and any change in the skies and what these will mean for us. Now before I outline the aspects and explain what they mean, I just want to clarify that astrology doesn't control us in any way, shape or form. It's like an external reflection of what's going on inside us. So the astrology is merely like a mirror. If we understand what's going on there, it can help us to understand why we're acting certain ways and also allow us to better navigate the way the energies are flowing this week so we can engage with the flow rather than trying to clash against it. Now I'll start off with the moon's passage through the signs as usual. We start off with the moon in Scorpio. Now here in Scorpio, the moon connects to the deeper parts of our emotional nature, to the heavy aspects or the hidden side of our emotional landscape. And during this time we sometimes feel old hurts come to the surface, but these are just opportunities for us to let go of the past and transform our inner landscape by using forgiveness to let go of these old emotional attachments. Then on Thursday, the moon enters Sagittarius, and this is a time where you may feel that need for expanding outwards, to explore new places, go on a long distance trip. And it's also a time of trying out new ideas, looking at more abstract notions and looking at the higher picture of things or higher perspective and seeing what ideas we can come up with, or what ideas they suggest to us and what visions we can tap into. Then on Sunday the moon will enter Capricorn, and this will be a time where whatever ideas that we have is a good time for putting it into practice and to test whatever ideas and theories we have and put them through a practical mindset, so see how they can be converted into physical manifestation rather than just sitting there as an idea. And then on Tuesday the moon will enter Aquarius, and this is a time for sitting back, applying more detached view to things, and also looking at what we can do for the community. So where Capricorn is more like self-interest in our own personal goals, Aquarius is looking at the wider picture and understanding that we're all interdependent, so it's important that we also nurture our communities. We don't just focus exclusively on ourselves. So one of the key changes this week is going to be Venus has been in Aquarius for the past few weeks. So in terms of our values and relationships, we may have valued things like freedom, humanitarian aims, and a more detached view. So focus more on the need for us being free within our relationships, but to encourage each other's empowerment. So it's trying to see things from, or valuing a more humanitarian focus in our relationships. But Venus is going to be moving into Pisces, and this will be taking place on the 9th, so Saturday. And this is a time during this transit with Venus in Pisces, we may be looking for trying to create that sense of oneness within relationships, that sense of union or merging spiritually and surrendering to universal love. So this may be a time where we may feel the need to expand the way we love to encompass a more all-encompassing kind of love. So, because Venus normally deals with the contained love, the personal love within relationships, and the tendency of how we relate to one another. Now, when she's in Pisces, this is more time for relating at a universal level, so allowing empathy, compassion, and psychic sensitivity to emerge in our relationships, and to radiate a universal love to others. But obviously for us to do that, we have to first give that to ourselves. So we have to love ourselves first and give that unconditional love, that unconditional acceptance to ourselves before we can give it to other people. Because if we can't give it to ourselves, then you can't give it to another person, because we don't know how to do it. So Venus in Pisces is encouraging us to embrace some more universal love, to break past the personal love of one-on-one relationships and radiate it to the whole. But we can only do this through loving ourselves first. And Venus also represents the inner feminine, so this could be a time where the feminine energies within each and every one of us is focused more at a universal level rather than at a personal. And this may well drive us to seek to radiate more compassion and love in our relationships, and to move beyond just personal love to the universal love, as I said. Now, some of the other aspects taking place are predominantly squares, so these may be experiences quite challenging, but sometimes we need these squares in order to motivate growth and break us out of a rut, or challenge us to stop sitting on our laurels and actually work towards deeper integration of the energies. So one of these squares this week is going to be between the Sun and Jupiter. So it's going to be building all through the week, but it's exact on Sunday. So with Jupiter's generally seen as beneficial and benign, so the aspect may not be as stressful as other planets do, but one of the things we need to be careful of here is relying on luck too much and not doing any of the hard work ourselves to make things. It's expecting to get things for free, or to do virtually no work in order to achieve something. And it can also be about excess, so it could be that we overstretch ourselves, or we go over the top in terms of obtaining things or pursuing egoic desires. So it's important that we take a step back and we remember that we do have to work in order to manifest anything. We have to take action. We can't just sit back on our laurels doing nothing, otherwise we're just going to cut ourselves off from the divine flow. Yes, Jupiter does bring grace, but at the same time we need discipline in order to do this. So this aspect will be challenging all of us to just be a bit more disciplined and be a bit more humble about how we do things, and to acknowledge the fact that we do need to work and take action in order for miracles to happen. They don't just happen of their own. We have to initiate that first step to set off the chain reaction that creates the miracle, or creates that flow of grace. So during this time, it's important that we look carefully at ourselves and observe where do we have a tendency to allow a kind of lazy or lackadaisical attitude to kick in. Where do we let discipline fall by the wayside, and how does this undermine the way we connect with the flow? Because part of the month of February is going to be all about going with the flow, and especially now we're within the eclipse window, so we're between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse. Stuff is going to be coming up to the surface during this period, and it's important that we don't allow complacency and we don't allow laziness to sabotage any of our efforts. So Saturn's presence in Capricorn is going to be important here, and it's important we draw upon that inner Saturn and focus on maintaining discipline, maintaining patience and self-control during this period, so that we don't allow laziness to creep in and sabotage whatever goals we're setting. Now we're also going to have a square between Mars and Neptune. This won't be complete, or won't be exact until over a week later. But with Mars and Neptune, these are two often antagonistic energies and almost opposing. They sit right next to each other in the zodiac, Mars, Aries and Pisces, which are the two signs they rule, but they are working at different ends. With Mars we're talking about action and pursuing desires, so it's the motivation to act. Whilst Neptune is a more dissolving force, it's about egolessness. Now this can create a bit of a problem, because action is generated by the ego. We need the ego in order for us to interact with the world around us. If we just destroy the ego, then we won't be able to engage in any action. But at the same time, the ego needs to be operating in its rightful place. So it's not the master, it's not driving everything, but it's there to fulfill our desires. It's about sublimating it so that instead of following egoic desires, we create spiritual devotions. So with Neptune, it's about that transcendent reality. It's the spiritual world, it's the immaterial. And this is particularly strong at this point in time with Neptune in his home sign of Pisces. So the spiritual energy is very strong, the dissolving energy is strong. And with the square between Mars and Neptune, what we need to be looking at doing is using the energy of Neptune to transform the egoic desires of Mars into devotion. So it makes it one-pointed. It's like a razor's edge that we're walking along. And if we don't do this and we keep following egoic desires, then Neptune often brings about confusion, disorientation and chaos in order to help us see that the ego isn't the driving force, it's not the be-all and end-all. So it's important that we spend time with spiritual devotion and allow it to, or learn to control our desires and sublimate them to the higher mind, or to the greater desire of the heart or of the soul. So this particular squares may normally bring tension, but sometimes that discomfort is a necessary driving force for us to engage in transformation. And this is what it's about transforming our desires through sublimating them to the needs of the soul or the higher self, whatever word you feel comfortable with. But either way, it's about curbing the excesses of the ego and learning to bring all the desires together into one pointed focus, and use spiritual devotion to make sure that whatever actions we're doing are aligned with spiritual laws, because Mars is in Sagittarius at the moment, so it's important that our actions are aligned with spiritual laws. But with Neptune in Pisces creating this square, it's important that our actions are motivated by love, they're motivated by devotion and driven by the heart rather than the ego. So as I said, this aspect's going to be building throughout the entire week and won't be exact until next week. The other square taking place is going to be Mercury square to Jupiter. So Jupiter's obviously in Scorpio at the moment and will be a key driving force at this time, so bringing to the surface a lot of the unconscious mind to make us aware of it so we can transform it. And Mercury's in Aquarius at this point before moving on to Pisces later in the month. But this square between Mercury and Jupiter, and Jupiter naturally oppose each other in the zodiac. Mercury ruling Gemini and Jupiter ruling Sagittarius, and these two form the mind axis. So the part of the mind that deals with the fine details and the day-to-day reality and the concrete is Mercury. Jupiter, on the other hand, deals with the higher ideals, or the higher understanding, or understanding how everything is tied together, and it deals with the big picture, but it's more abstract. Now with the square, this maybe experiences confusion depending on how in control we are of our minds, because it's with Mercury dealing with the fine details and Jupiter the big, it could manifest as not being able to see the forest for the trees, or being so focused with the forest that we don't see the small details that we need to be looking for. So during the square, it's important that we keep the big picture and the small details in balance with one another, because if we focus on the big details with the exclusion of the small, the fine details, then we may overlook key problems with the way we're viewing things, or key approaches that we need to embark on in order to achieve the bigger picture. So Mercury deals with those fine details that allow us to see how things work at the micro level and apply them to the macro. Because if we understand the micro level and the importance of them and how they impact the macro, then we achieve a great integration of the left and right mind. So Jupiter is pretty much the right mind. It's seeing the whole pictures of seeing the grand scheme and the big picture of how everything is interrelated, whilst Mercury deals with the fine details as separate data So Mercury gathers all the data and Jupiter collates it into a big picture. But with these two square one another, we may struggle to achieve this balance where Mercury brings in all the fine details and all the research, and Jupiter collects them into the big picture and helps to give us the right perspective on how things are linked up and how things need to work together for us to achieve the big picture. And this can also manifest as, if we're too focused on Jupiter, we can have all kinds of fantastic plans in place, but all we ever do is talk about it. We don't actually take action on it, or we don't research what steps need to be taken in order to make that vision a reality. So with this particular square, we need to be looking at making sure that we're understanding the big picture of things. We also recognise where the small details fit in and the importance of them, and then taking action through logic and planning based on the vision in order to make it happen. So the other aspects this week is going to be a growing sextile between the Sun and Uranus. So the Sun is in Uranus's home sign of Aquarius, so Uranus's energy will be felt quite strongly as a result of this. But Uranus, this aspect is going to be growing, but it won't be exact until next week, and close to when the eclipse itself will take place. But with this aspect, it brings opportunities to transform our own sense of self-identity through embracing change, embracing our intuition, embracing insights from the higher mind. But these are our opportunities. They're not guaranteed to happen, so if we recognise these opportunities, it's our responsibility to take advantage of them. If we don't, then we miss the opportunity to see things from a broader perspective, or to recognise where we're out of alignment with the higher vision of things, and where we need to course correct. And it's also, if there are parts of our identity which we need to change in order to become close to our authentic self and go through that individuation, which the Sun in Aquarius is all about, and if we don't tap into the higher mind through Uranus and make changes to the way we approach things, then we miss an opportunity to become better versions of ourselves, or have a mindset that operates more from the higher mind rather than the lower mind. So during this time, it's important that if we see any important or recognise any important needs to transform ourselves or to operate from a higher level of understanding than we currently are, we need to have the courage to undertake those changes and apply them in our own personal lives, so that who we are in the world around us is as close to being an accurate representation of who we truly are. So it's that individuation and allowing the insights from the higher mind to transform us and renew us, and to show us the vision that humanity itself needs to be moving towards, and that we as individual souls need to contribute our own part towards this. So there's quite a lot to take on board there, but I hope it's a useful guide for the week. There's quite a few challenges taking place. There's a lot of opportunity for transformation and to bring a greater degree of integration between different parts of the mind, and to bring our actions and desires into alignment with spirit rather than ego. But we have to take the opportunities ourselves, or we have to embrace the process. It's not something that's forced upon us. We all have free will, and astrology does not violate that in any way, shape or form. Astrology merely shows us what the energetic themes are at this time and what lessons we need to be learning. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to learn those lessons. No one can force those lessons upon us, and Sky certainly isn't going to do that. But if these opportunities to learn something are here, then we owe it to ourselves to learn the lessons and become better versions of ourselves, because this will improve us for later on in the year, especially when the Sun's entered Aries and starting a whole new astrological cycle. This is a period of tying up loose ends, of learning the remaining lessons from this astrological cycle we're in, ready to clear out all of the old and make space for the new, so that as we come into spring later in the year, we're ready to initiate new projects based on a higher understanding of who we are and a better understanding of what is necessary to develop, both for our own individual selves but also for the wider collective. So that's a useful guide for you. May it bring you much growth, many lessons and many blessings. Take care.